It's the truth about parenting. Something needs to be real for us. The truth is in the raw things that people don't talk about. This journey is not for the weak. Welcome to the Mama Jack podcast. Suzie, how are you today?
I'm so wonderful, Jack. It's so amazing to be here on the Mama Jack podcast.
Yay, I'm so happy to have you. So, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Okay, well, I wanted to start, I guess, by sharing my proudest achievement and to date, and I guess that's raising the generally happy, healthy, helpful humans that are my son and daughter, who are now young adults. Um, I have a passionate and lion-hearted daughter who was born. She was literally born with fire in her belly. She's driven, she's focused. I knew one day she'd be a grand success, but parenting her highly spirited, highly energetic, um, very determined self, even from when she was tiny, took really specific strategies and intentional work. Um, I can see it now emerging into what I've been trying to shape it into for many, many years, is leadership and a sense of community. And there's a hashtag ocean conservation. She did an open water swim with tiger sharks, but that's a whole other story. I can see though where this little activist is going to be able to focus some very determined attention now that she's 16 and growing up. My eldest child is now 19, and he has always been a highly sensitive, creative, more introspective sort of young person. I call him my indigo child. He kind of feels the world in hypercolor, and he pays the price for this. And I feel like for all of my parenting years with him, I've walked this sort of I've held this sword's edge of pushing him enough so he actually builds confidence and interacts with the world and can build his skills and build his connections, but also backing off to make sure that his stress levels stay out of that toxic zone. And I've lost so much sleep over his well-being across, his childhood and it's so amazing now to see the empathic, driven young man that I have now in my house. But when they were little, we had a series of traumas over several years, and this amplified both their big emotions and mine also. So our kids have this magical way of shining a mirror on us to expose our own triggers and fears. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I know.
So super powerful. And so when they were little, and I had this, highly spirited little Tassie devil flying around, and this sensitive, clingy one as well, who would never leave my side. I was pretty much constantly overwhelmed and exhausted, and I was always second guessing myself. And I actually remember a time they were quite little and probably 2 and 5, and I had locked myself in my bedroom. I was sitting on the floor crying. And I was hiding there so that my kids didn't see my distress. I wanted them to think, Mama's got it sorted, but Mama didn't have it sorted. And I think the worst part of it was I was really beating myself up. I was really mean to myself in the words I was using to myself. And in addition to this, I was an occupational therapist that had been working in pediatrics for 15 years. I was a mental health care practitioner running a really busy private practice. It was highly successful. I had a team of OTs and OT assistants that I supervised, and together we served hundreds of families each week. Uh, Inside me, I kind of had that imposter sort of syndrome. I was this developmental specialist, but I was feeling so much shame. I was not sure that I was enough as an OT. I was not sure I was enough for the therapist that I was supporting. I was not sure, most importantly, for me anyway, that I was enough as a mama, really. And I had this son clinging to me like Velcro, cried whenever I had to leave him. He was a really tall kid and he was constantly climbing over fences to get home. Like he tried to climb out of his preschool, his kinder, we call it kindergarten, but you call it preschool. He tried to climb out of his preschool a number of times. He would undo his seatbelt buckle, and I would have to stop the car every 100 meters because he just didn't want to leave me. And then I had the me do it sister with her hands on her hips. Defiant refusal of anything other than her way of what she wanted. So, I wanted connection for them both. It was actually really impossible for me to create working. I was working, supporting us, the three of us, and, also be able to do this parenting. And I was feeling a lot of guilt and worry. Like I was actually really worried for the future of my kids as well, worried that my son was never going to be able to do anything on his own and that my daughter one day would be this out of control, angry teenager. Having watched the arc of many families over the many years in my work. Um, but that day sitting on the floor and crying, something shifted and I had to make a decision, right? Our life had to change. And I think to that point, I didn't have enough motivation to change it for myself. But when I looked at my kids and that mirror that they were reflecting back to me, it was an opportunity. They motivated me to make this change for myself, right? Even when I couldn't quite do it for myself anyway. So we need to start where we are, yeah? And I was pretty much alone in this mess. So I realized, I really had to pull on my big girl pants and get up there and do something about it. As an OT, my style of work had always been to be strengths based, and so I kind of said, "Well, if you were an OT and you walked in the clinic, what would you say to you?" This is the only way I could kind of do it to myself. And I would say lean into your strengths. And so my strengths were connecting with people and studying knowledge, seeking knowledge. So I asked for help, which was really hard for me. I'm not a person who ever asked for help before this time. Um, and I leaned in also to further study. So I ended up spending quite a lot of time, energy, money, both on training and self-development. I leaned into professional supports. I had an amazing life coach who was also a counselor. And I worked through a lot of those blocks of my own about not feeling good enough. And I grew my confidence in the ability I actually had. I had the ability to parent the children I was given. I just kept doubting myself and pulling back before I could actually do this work for myself. Um, I also invested a lot in incredible research as neuroscience. I did a graduate diploma in psychology and, was surrounded myself by people who knew trauma informed processes and understood those things. And as I did this, I discovered a whole bunch of strategies that were really, really strong evidence based, but also were really, really effective, both with my own little wildlings, but also with the families that I was lucky enough to work with professionally. So things like being able to define my goals and values so that it would help me make decisions and lead my family in a more purposeful, less stressful way. Um, a variety of somatic tools, so tools where we use our body to manage the stress and not just all the talking therapy. The talking therapy was really difficult for my children. And so we did a lot of somatic things, playing in play and stand and art and physically moving our bodies to really move through that trauma and calm our energies and be able to move forward from that. Shot a lot of hoops with my son as well, that repetitive movement. And establishing routines and rhythms that suited us and suited what was important for us so that we could actually spend time and energy more in things that were exciting to us, big adventures we wanted to go on, even if that was an adventure to the park versus, but within routines, there was safety. And so that also created a calmer sort of environment for us and less roller coaster for all of us with our emotions. And, through all my study, I also learnt to decode children's behavior really, really well so that I could actually shape the responses I was giving my child. And I have trained a lot of parents in how to do this as well, not just to the behavior that they're presenting with, but what's actually underlying the behavior. Because what that does is it then prevents the crying, the screaming, and it pretty much opens us up for more joy and playful times together. Um, I was still doubting myself a lot, but week by week in my family and also family by family that I was working with, I worked out what was most powerful. I worked out what was possible. And more than that, I worked out what was sustainable because some of the, the concepts that I was taught, they were tricky for families to actually use and for me as well to be consistent in. But I worked out which ones were, and not just for me, but for many families of different sizes and shapes, many families that had different strengths and different resources as well, but almost all with children that had challenging behaviours and big emotions. So now I'm at a point where I walk in absolute confidence of these strategies. I've watched many families succeed with them, and I also walk in absolute awe of the amazing, wonderful, empathic, globally minded kids that I've been lucky enough to have mothered. And this knowledge and these strategies, that have bring so much harmony for other families as well. And I've distilled this all down into a stormproof your kids system that I teach in my programs as well. But what I know to be true, most importantly, is that having to parent highly energetic, emotional, spirited, sensitive kiddos, however they present, these kids with big emotions, whether it's, born of some trauma, born of some neurodiversity, or they're just born that way. Um, it's often exhausting and lonely because the parent guidebooks and the advice that you get doesn't fit these kids. And I think that's also what really fed into my not enoughness is that as a parent when my kids were young, is that I had this sense of, well, I've got all this knowledge already. So I already had a knowledge base, but it just didn't seem to apply or work or be consistently working with my kids. And I think also you can feel really frustrated about that idea that you're not getting it right because what you've been told isn't really working. And those strategies with these kids particularly takes time to be effective. So you have to feel confident in yourself that you're doing the right thing and moving in the right direction and be really intentional in it because their big emotions are going to come to the fore in the most embarrassing and unlikely of places, right? Like, yeah.
Mhm.
So you've had experience with that too, hey, Jack?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I
Yeah.
my son is a super sensitive soul.
Yeah.
And my daughter, like yours, is like the opposite. She's like so my son is yeah, we're working on it with him, but it's like a slippery slope, right? Like I don't want to take away how sweet he is, but he does I do want him to quote toughen up a little bit. So I'm trying to see what I can do to
Mm.
not make him a mean kid, but to be able to stick up for himself. But he's 4. So it's hard at 4 to teach that stuff, right? It's like, yeah. So I just ended up telling him he was having trouble at school. The boys were too rough. He coming home and he was fine. And the boys are too rough. Like, mommy, I don't like them. They're too rough. And I was like, honey, go to wherever feel safe. Like wherever you feel safe. So he goes with the girls. And the one day I actually went to, because they're on the playground right before pickup, and I went to the playground to watch. She was like, I'm going to see what's actually happening with these kids. Because, at 4 years old, you believe like you believe them, but you're like, what's actually happening here? And I watched them, and it was the most entertaining thing, first of all, but it was hilarious. Like the boys were rough, but let me tell you, the girls that my son hangs out with are like, John, No, like they really stood up for everything. But my son was definitely just like in the back, kind of giggling. Like he was not the one in the front, like telling these kids to slow down or anything. And I was like, oh my goodness. So now he's like, yeah, my girlfriends, me and my girlfriends, we do this. Me and my girlfriends, we do that. So his good friends at school are three girls. And it's very sweet to me. But
And he's learnt
yeah.
to, because he kind of probably likes them telling the other boys to slow down. So he's learnt to get what he wants without having to do the thing that's tricky for him. And my son was very similar. I remember, he would train people to do the stuff. Like he is sensitive to sticky and he doesn't like messy things. And at kinder, he always wanted to play at preschool. He always wanted to play in the sandpit, but they had to take their socks and shoes off to play in the sandpit and then put them back on. And the sand was always all over the socks and he hated it. He trained three little girls at preschool to put his socks and shoes back on. Which again, I didn't know about till I went and did mummy help one day, right? So I went and did mummy help and got there and I'm watching and I'm thinking, what are these girls doing? You're taking feminism back like 20 years. But he already had this beautiful charm to be able to get people to
Yeah.
help him with the things that were tricky. One of the things I did with him, and I've done with a lot of kids, preschool age, that sort of 4 or 5 age that are highly sensitive, is talk to them about that sensitivity as a superpower. So it's kind of like Superman's kryptonite as well as his strength, and talking about, or they could choose a different superhero if they wanted to, but, talking about how we have to learn to manage that. So it's about learning to manage your energy already at 3 and 4 and 5, and they can actually do it. And so, talking to them about being able to approach and then retreat, approach and then retreat. So when you're feeling safe, I love that language, have a go, and you don't always have to feel fully safe to have a go. Sometimes you have to stretch yourself a little bit and do something a little bit scary. Um, Within the bounds, of course.
Mhm.
But, Superman doesn't always, he has to be brave at times. But there's other times if he knows the kryptonite's there, he's going to move away because he knows that it's going to cause him grief and it's going to cause him hurt. So,
Yeah.
that's a really great way of talking about it without having to do the, hey, you need to toughen up, buddy. Because
Mhm.
all that does to a sensitive child is says very clearly, I don't like that part of you. Whereas that's a part
Yeah.
of them that's really inherent. They're born like that. I really truly believe it. The day Kai was born, I would feed him, like he was literally a day old. I would feed him. He'd have slept. He was like all these basic needs. He had me. He was snuggled with me. The other child in the ward would cry and he would bawl his eyes out. He would be crying and I'd be like, I can't settle him. What's going on? I don't know why I can't settle him. He already had empathy.
Mhm.
Um, he was that kid. And, I remember walking to school one day and he was maybe grade 2 sort of year. And there was this tiny little preppy, which is a kindergartner in the US. And it was an out of uniform day. So all our kids wear uniforms to school here in Australia.
Mhm.
And it was an out of uniform day. It was a sports day. So everybody had their favorite, footballers and basketballers and all that sort of stuff gear on. And this kid was in uniform and Guy's crying. I'm like, he doesn't even know this child, but he's like, that child's going to feel so left out all day. Like this wisdom of an old man in this like little 6, 7 year old body.
Oh. Oh, little
So,
dude.
yeah. So that's a strategy though, and I'm like, that's Superman's kryptonite, mate. You just got to step back from it a little bit. That's somebody else's feelings, not yours. Yeah.
Mm.
So teaching them slowly over time that that's somebody else's emotions. You don't need to take that on. Is really powerful if you can do it while they're 3, 4, 5, because when they get to 13, 14, 15, let me tell you, the surge in big emotion is
Mhm.
massive, like really massive. Because again, same as 2 to 5, 12 to 15, there's synaptic pruning in the brain. So what actually happens is the emotional center of the brain matures, but the thinking part of the brain kind of like is rearranging. So it's like cleaning out your closet or your pantry where you pull everything out. So it makes a big fat mess before you can put it in and organize it for the next level, you know. And in that period, our kids feel emotions much bigger. And it's even bigger for there. So yeah. Um
That's great
something
advice. Thank you so much.
yeah. Something else I wanted to talk a little bit about. I've got a bunch of things that I'm aware with, just through time constraints and all of that, is that I alluded a little bit to the routines and rhythms to rest in. And,
Yeah.
I'm not, when I had babies, I was not this like routine person. I kind of was like child led. So you want to eat, I'll feed you. You want to play, I'll play. If you're ready for sleep or you look like you're showing me some sleep signs, I'll support you to get to sleep, sort of thing. I wasn't this real sort of regimented person. But I realized by the time the kids were preschoolers and then into primary school, um, I realized, it was much easier to have routines and rhythms and rituals. And those things actually, the research shows us clearly, it reduces cognitive load for me as mama. And we as
Mhm.
mum have the highest cognitive load in, like, there's huge amounts of research that support this, where we're not just thinking about all the work factors, we're thinking about the kids, we're probably thinking about the dogs or the cats, we're thinking about a partner, we're thinking about, the birthday that's coming up and I've got to sort something out for my mom or my dad, myself. And, we're literally juggling a gazillion things all at once. And so if we can somehow reduce that cognitive loading, we reduce the monkey mind and we reduce that stress level that we have inside of ourselves. And our kids often follow that through co-regulation as well. Um, so an example that I often give is a routine of, just something even really simple like brushing your kids' teeth morning and night. Have either of your kids ever fought you about brushing their teeth? They don't like their teeth brushed, or have they been okay with that?
Yes. Yes. There are good
Really?
days and there are bad days. So my son doesn't really fight on it. It's just the time because I like him and his sister to do it together. He goes to bed a little later, but then it's already done. Right. So I try to keep their routines like pretty similar.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they're 2 and 4. So, like, she still
yeah,
naps, but even when she naps, we have, like, quiet time, right? So
yeah,
he can
yeah.
just, like, everything gets shut off. He plays either with his Legos or something like that. We try to get him doing stuff with his hands because he does like to watch TV, and even TV time, like, we'll cut it and be like, "Let's build an obstacle course," and get him
Mm.
running around, right? Because yeah, we're slowly starting to put more routine into place, especially now that my 2-year-old can follow along with it. When she was little and her routine was all over the place, it was very hard for me to implement routine for my son too. And I'm sure that's added to his stress. But yeah, recently we've started to implement a lot of routines.
Yeah. And so with my son, he didn't like toothbrushing. He didn't like hairbrushing. He didn't like toothbrushing. But if I did it in a routine, if we did it every morning when we got up and every evening, straight after breakfast, we did it. And every evening, the last thing we did before we went to bed and read books was the teeth. And if we did it in the routine every single morning and night, we were fine. But I'd miss one time and I would have to fight with him for a week of morning, night, morning, night, morning, night before he'd settle back into the routine. And even within that routine, I had to actually have a mini routine. So I had a mini routine where I would actually sing to him. I would count down and then I would sing to him. And the second I'd finish singing, the toothbrush came out. So I'd count down, the toothbrush would go in. This is the way we brush your teeth, brush your teeth, brush your teeth. And then when I got to the end of the song, the toothbrush would come straight out. And he was then able to feel safe enough. And if we deviated from that, like if my ex-husband had tried to do and he didn't quite get it right, that's not how mum does it, you know. He would
Yeah.
have just melted down. He refused. I was the only person who could brush his teeth. So it was very exciting when I taught him to do so. He could tolerate that much better. Yeah. So routines allow us to rest and also often feel safe and secure. It's a bit like when you have that long summer holiday And us as mums are just going, go back to school, go back to kinder, go back to preschool, because it means we can go back to a routine and we're not constantly having to think, somebody needs to eat now. Like, I don't know about you, but in COVID, people seem to eat constantly. Like, I seem to be preparing food in my house like 24/7. Whereas, when they go off to school, it's much more, everybody gets stuff ready in the morning and then I don't have to deal with anything until a meal until dinner time.
Yeah. I mean, I have a
Yeah.
4-year-old, 2-year-old, so snacks are just running through the air all the
Constant.
time.
Yeah. 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 So, and I remember that too. But even that, when we're in a routine, we often would pack stuff up and then we'd have it for the day, and they'd actually have their little boxes that they were going through during the day as well. And that's what I sort of set up, because I was trying to work at the same time. And yeah, it was all those sort of rhythms as well. Another routine that I established was one called We Have a Problem. And so this is my number one fight stopping strategy. And I started implementing this when my kids were 2 and 5. Two's probably a bit young for this strategy. It probably works better with sort of preschool age and up. So sort of 3 to 10, it's ideal for. But adapt the language, break it down a bit more, and you can actually do it with a younger child, especially if they've got a bit of that crystal child in them anyway. They're going to come with you because they're going to want to be part of it, and they're going to drive, and they're going to do all of that. So my daughter was able to participate in this very actively because she wanted her say in the world, even at that age. So it's a really amazing strategy. And what it does is it actually stops everything and slows it down, and it helps to build what I call, as a therapist, I call executive functioning skills. I don't know if you've heard that term before. So our executive functioning is all the abilities that kind of our frontal lobe takes care of for us to be able to come up with, great new ideas, regulate ourselves during interactions, solve problems that come up, use our imagination and creativity to come up with new plans and ways to solve those problems. Being able to sequence what we need to get from here to there. So if I plan that I'm going to be able to do that, how I get there all happens with our executive functioning. And so executive functioning skills are really predictive of happiness and well-being as we age, as we go through our teens and then into young adulthood and actually into adulthood and success. They're really big markers of success from a young age. So building these skills in our kids from a little age is really, really important for their social participation, as well as for their learning, as well as for their future mental health and well-being, probably more than anything. And so this tool actually breaks that all down. And I don't have time today to go through the whole tool, but I actually have a free book that goes through it, and it's got a little video guide that people can click into as well if people are interested in that. And it's a really cool, the video guide, I'm doing it in one of my workshops, and I actually step through the whole tool with a mama as well, and it's quite a good conversation as well there. And I used to use it. I had a blue folder. I don't know where the blue folder is. I had a blue folder that I kept it in. And whenever we'd have a problem, like one of the core problems that I often had was my kids getting out the front door. Do you ever have that problem for your 2 and 4? Just getting ourselves organized to get out the door was always.
Yeah, of course. I thought you were about that, talking about them randomly running. My first did not ever really do that. My second, now she will run after people. We had to put the little child lock on the top of the door because she's like, when daddy goes, she gets really upset now. But getting out the door. I always plan 20 minutes before I got to leave.
Right. Does it work? Does that work?
Sometimes.
Most of the time.
Because there's 20 barrier. Otherwise, I get to the car and I'm like, oh my God, how are we behind 15 minutes? Like, So I do try to like get it started as early as I can. Yes. And all
So I
everything I can do is done before that process
yes.
even starts. So like snacks, any diapers, whatever I have to prepare, done. And then at the 20-minute mark, okay, we're getting ready to leave. Put your shoes on, put your socks on. And then slowly that gives him, like my son, time to be like, "Meh," and do whatever. I need to finish this. I need to go to the bathroom. It's always the last second before we leave. He's all dressed in his coat, got his shoes on. I have to pee. And I'm like, it's you 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, go pee, honey. Go pee. No, that's why we do 3 minutes early.
I love that. The socks and shoes were always a problem in my house. Um, and we employed this strategy. So when we employ this strategy, everything stops. So I chose to manage this problem on a Saturday morning when we normally went to the park or the beach. And so the kids are highly motivated to go, but this socks and shoes issue, like, seriously, I don't know where my shoes are. Like they were just there, mate. You've actually gone and hidden them, like because you don't want to put them on. Like I don't
Yes,
understand
right.
what's going on. And my daughter had to have, a perfect steam-free situation happening in her socks. So we would often take the socks off, on and off, on and off, like 18 times before she could go out the door. So socks and shoes were a massive issue for both my kids from a sensory point of view. And so this one morning, I remember I got the blue folder out and I put it down and I said, we've got a problem and we need to solve it. And so we actually stepped through a whole problem solving sequence with the kid. And they both went, oh, like, because, we're not going anywhere until we've solved this problem. Anyway, they managed to come up with, it did take us about 20 minutes, but they managed to come up with the solution that they were going to take their socks and shoes in the car and put their socks and shoes on in the car whenever we left the house so that we weren't late leaving, because literally we would be 20 minutes late every single time because of this socks and shoes issue, right? So to this day, they're 16 and 19. To this day, we're going to go. We walk out the door. They've both got their socks and shoes in their hand. He'll put them on in the car. But what happened was, because they had a voice in that answer, and I said, well, if this works, it works. If you've got your socks and shoes on by the time we arrive at wherever we've got to go, I'm fine with that. So it's kind of cool. They get their voice in there. They get to come up with some really crazy ideas, and kids come up with the most amazing, crazy ideas. But this was one they came up with, and I agreed to it based on the idea that it would actually do the work. And it
Yeah.
worked. And still
It's
today,
so funny you said 20 minutes because, yeah, 20 minutes. Like that's a good in time, 20 minutes.
the golden time, totally the golden time. Yeah, 100%. So so I guess there's some of the things that some ideas I can offer and support. There's quite a few others. Not sure if you want to chat about one more or if you're good to
Yeah, of
yeah,
course.
okay. So one of the other ones that I absolutely love is intentional parenting, is values-based parenting. Have you heard a lot about values-based parenting before, or intentional parenting before?
I'm sure I have, but
Yeah,
not in that exact terminology.
language.
So
Yeah,
let's talk about it. Yes.
might be my Australianisms doing it to you too.
Mm.
So I guess for me, this was one of the things I really got from coaching when my kids were 2 and 5, when I really made that decision that I needed to go and do something different. This was kind of a key to a lock. This was a game changer for me. And I actually worked through a whole process to come up with my top 5 values that I wanted for my kids. And I have now refined that process, and I work with families to go through that for themselves as well. Because everyone's going to be different, right? Like if you and I sat down, we might have some overlap, but we might have some differences as well. And that's okay, because, you know, the world needs lots of people that are doing different things, right? Um, So I guess one of the best first activities to do in building this, I I'll come to that in a sec. I'll tell you this little story about my daughter first. So one of my values, so I ended up with 3. Um, I changed them a little bit in the beginning because I realized, so I actually had connection, kindness, and compassion, but I realized it didn't work because there was no edge to it. It was all soft and squishy. Um, so I
Mhm.
switched out compassion for bravery. So I started reading Brené Brown stuff and I added bravery into gifts. I read Gifts of Imperfection and I added bravery in. And so connection, kindness, and bravery have been the 3 core values that I have parented from since they were 2 and 5, and now they're 15 and 19. And so one of the things that I found with my daughter, and she still does it, is that she would wait until it was bedtime and it was quiet. And we'd done all the books, we'd done all the routine, the bedtime routine. And she would then start her list of grievances for the day. You know, this happened, somebody knocked this block tower over, somebody took somebody else's snack, it wasn't always grievances against her. It was things that she'd observed where people had done the wrong thing, if you like. And sometimes this, list was little and it only took a couple of minutes and then she'd settle to sleep really easy. It was like she was unloading that to me so that she didn't have to, so
Mhm.
she could sleep. But other times, oh, Jack, it went on and on and on and on
Oh,
and on
thing.
and on.
Both of you.
I'm a working mum. I see kids in my therapy clinic like all day while my kids are at school in kindy and preschool and childcare. And then I grab my kids and then we do all this stuff together and then I get them to bed and then I do all my paperwork from like 9 p.m. to 12 p.m. So I am knackered. You know, I'm literally sleeping from midnight till 5 a.m. each night and I am running from 5 a.m. midnight. So then she's like, oh, and then they took my toy that I really wanted. And I felt so sad. And I'm just like, just right. That's where I started. But she would then amp up. And then the firecracker, lion hearted kid would be screaming at me. And then getting her to sleep would take even longer. Yeah. So I kind of worked out I needed to take a step back and work out a strategy. I needed to, do the we have a problem strategy for myself in this parenting moment. And I went, well, I want to basically demonstrate to her this value of connection that I have as, this is my values based parenting. I need to land back there. And to be connected, I need to see her and hear her and feel her where she's at when she does it. Right. And so what I did is I kind of wound bedtime back a little bit so that, again, like you do with the leaving the house, the 20 minutes, like let's just give myself another buffer of 20 minutes. And then if she goes on a bit longer, then it's not eating away so much time. And I can still clean the kitchen and do all of those sorts of things and then get to my work. Um, and so I did that. And she continued to do that. She's continued to do that her entire life. It lessened off as she got older. You know, they get to about 9 or 10 and they start doing it less. Um, but she kind of just knew that that was the quiet time where she could get me one on one and tell me the things that were worrying her. And let me tell you that stopping and listening to the block tower got knocked over and the toy that I wanted got taken away, or somebody spilt their juice at lunchtime when she was little, means that now she's 16, when crap happens with her mate or with her or something's happened, she comes to me. She comes towards me. She doesn't move away from me. Um, and so I'm really grateful for having had that value of connection when she was little, so I could teach her that you're seen, you're heard. I
Mhm.
feel your feelings. I can hold space for you while you feel them. I don't need to fix them, but I can hold space for you. That's pretty crappy. Um, from a really little age, because now when it actually really is quite big, um, I can hold that space again.
Mhm.
Hard for me not to fix it. Like I have to go at
I know,
16.
right? all of the time. Like, even when my son was saying he was pushed by like another kid, I was like, who? Who? And then I'm like, Jackie, they're 4. Calm down.
Again,
They're
it's just it's still good to teach them what to do about that, right? But just not in the moment. We've got to hold that space for them in the moment, let them feel the feelings because what we resist persists. So we've got to let them feel the feelings so they can let go of it, and we can teach them those other things later. Have another conversation with them at another time, and we're out walking or we're out playing or whatever. Say, hey, when that happened, what else could you have done? Or those sorts of things, but not in the moment. So, yeah. So I
and
guess the starting.
the kids, or kids. My daughter doesn't say much yet. She's actually delayed in speech. So like even for 2, she's not talking as much. But after with my son, I'm constantly, how was your day? You seem tired. What happened? And I'm trying to have them like, because I believe that, and this is always how I've been, driving away from either work or school. That was my decompression time. And when you go into the house, you want fresh new energy, right? So like it's always a safe space to talk about anything in the house. But let's try to get, if anything negative happened, like let's talk about it before we even get home. So when we do get home, we can be happy and have a good time, and or we can talk about it more if you need to. But it's kind of setting the stage that, I'm sure as he gets older, if I start to work, like I'm going to be getting a phone call after school. Mom, what happened at school today? Like totally like setting that stage. But it will come up sometimes at night, but he's more of a like right away after school. I could see it on his face if he's sad, happy. Even his teacher, because he'll tell his teacher, he knows like, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm mad. This person said that. He's very good at sharing emotions.
Good.
And even with his little sister, and his little sister doesn't know yet, but I think he's making her hard because he's her mother, and she's just like, she's a brute. I have to say, for 2 years old, she puts up with that 4-year-old. She puts him in his place sometimes, but yeah. So that's what I kind of try to do for us. I want to try to make that like a thing, like
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
decompress before we go home.
Yeah.
Just like Addie,
I
like
love it.
if you
Yeah.
had a stressful day, like call me and compress first. So when you come in, he's gone so much. I don't, if the kids are up, I want them to see stress Addie. I want him to have the space for them, like get it all out as much as you can. And then at least
Rise
as
your
much
energy
as
again.
yes, to
Yes.
show up. And then if you still need to talk about it, when the kids go to bed, we can talk about it. I don't want to hide that stuff from them, but at the same time, they're so little right now that they don't
Yeah, little.
understand, like, they just feel that. I know they feel the energy. Like, it's like a domino effect in my house. It's like, I'm upset. This kid's upset. That kid's upset. But it's crazy, even at their young ages, how much they already hold. And I'm very cautious of that. But like, for instance, the other day, mommy had a moment. She was like, I wasn't depressed. I wasn't super happy. I don't know what I was. My brain just wasn't there. And my 2-year-old just comes and she shakes me, and I'm just kind of out of it a little bit. And then I was laying down, and she just laid beside me and looked into my eyes. It's like she knew. She knew mommy needed like love, and mommy needed that moment. And kids are
Holding space for
so,
you. Yeah.
yes. And
Yeah.
my son will do the same. Like if mommy's in bed, like it's so cute. If it's his dad, because me and dad just take turns taking him to bed. And I think it's super important for his dad to take him to bed when he's not working, because he works so often and he doesn't get to do that. And I don't want my husband to regret one day, like, oh my God, I didn't have those special moments with the kids. You know what I mean? Because it might seem like a task now, but I also know in the future, these are the tasks that you're going to miss. Like one day they're not going to want us to take them to bed. And my kid's 4, and I'm almost certain to lay him down and leave. But I am just holding on, and I am one, but mommy will later. I know one day he's going to be like, mommy, you can go. And I'm going to be like, You know,
And it's sad. It is
that's
hard.
hard for me. I'll be like, oh my God, okay, he's growing up now. But
Yeah, yeah.
oh,
Well, and I think,
no.
70% of communication is nonverbal, right? So even our kids that don't have language yet, and
Mhm.
even if, she might have receptive language that's reasonably good, but not yet her expressive language. So, they get the vibe, like what you're saying, like they know
Mhm.
what those emotions are. And in fact, it's really interesting you use the word decompression because I teach another strategy called the decompression dance strategy, which is not necessarily physically dancing, although the good old dance party always worked really well in my house. If kids were dysregulated, a dance party always brought the energy back up. But more that idea of when we reconnect when we've been separated because someone's been at work or someone's been, at preschool or kinder or at primary school or at childcare, then you have this time where you can decompress together. And some people need movement with that. So, I would always walk my kids to kinder and school because both of them needed that movement on the way back and to there, but mainly on the way back. And that was our time, like you said, in the car to chat and to talk it through and get rid of the day so that we're shedding the day as we walk. And by the time we get there, we've got that. Yeah, I really like that. And sometimes I would stop at the park purposefully because I realized the shedding wasn't happening enough. We needed to do something a bit more intensive together. And we'd go and play for a little while together before we would then head home. And creating that time for that decompression and doing it in an intentional, mindful manner, like you're doing, Jack. It's so, so powerful. It's such an enormous strategy that often gets overlooked. And we think that kids can just transition from one setting to another really easily. And ourselves as well. And what you're highlighting there is that power of that co-regulation of being able to know our kids will follow the energy that we're bringing. So if we're frustrated or we're stressed, they'll probably cling to us more. If we're, feeling happy and relaxed, they're going to manage to probably imitate that vibe as well. So maybe that's why the dance party was always such a good strategy in my house. So I either added salt and sand, took them to the beach, or did a dance party because I think they're my happy place,
Yeah, of course.
right?
No, I totally agree. We have dance parties. The kids ask for them sometimes. It's super cute. And my sister-in-law bought us a karaoke machine for Christmas. And at first, we were like, oh God, 'cause the kids were in that karaoke. You could imagine what it sounded like. But it is the cutest freaking thing now. And me and my husband ended up taking it over for a long time. So there's some karaokeing happening here as well with all of that. Like sing it out. Get it out of your, I always say your throat chakra, right? I'm a spiritual person, chakras, everything like that. Clear that throat chakra. You sing it out, dude. Like whatever you have to do. Um, I was gonna say something. Oh,
That's
yeah.
such a
So
powerful
my
somatic tool, by the way, singing. Like it's such a
Mhm.
powerful somatic tool because that breath activates that parasympathetic nervous system, that calming nervous system, really better than anything. It's the most powerful thing we've got. So when you teach your kids to sing and do it as loud as they can, you're actually teaching them to do those really big breaths. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and I taught my kids breathing techniques. My daughter doesn't need it yet so much, but my son had really bad tantrums when he was 2 and 3. Like really bad, like hour and a half long. My therapist told me, I love her so much. With little kids, you sniff the roses and blow out the candles. So like I would
Mm.
always teach them like,
Yeah,
and even when he wasn't upset. So when he was upset and he heard that, it wasn't an absolute no.
that's
And
right.
but it's
Yeah.
interesting, like my son, he will do intuitive things without any like it's literally just out of nowhere it started. And meaning like he wants to hug trees. We live in an apartment complex. There's like 5 trees in our area. I have to name them and he'll go hug every single one. If he's upset, he needs to hug the tree. The other day we're coming home from therapy. He was overwhelmed. It was raining. He's like, I just want to dance in the rain, Mama. Please, can I just
Oh,
dance in the rain? And I was like, can we do it when we get home? Maybe he's like, no, no, I can't wait. We need to do it now, mom. So I just stopped the car in the Starbucks parking lot and I was like, hi, bro. And he got out and he stomped a little bit and he's like, okay, I feel better now, mom. I feel better. And I'm
You
like,
need to just physically stomp it out, the emotions
yeah. And
out. Yeah.
it's
Mm,
kind of incredible the things that he just does on his
I
own. I'm
know.
like, that's why I say these kids, like, they come out super intuitive. And if you keep feeding that intuition and teaching them the emotions and everything like that, it's like, I'm excited to see what they're going to be like in the future because
Mhm.
growing, I wasn't as emotionally aware,
No.
a lot of,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about your parents, but a lot of parents, they were brushed it under the rug type of people or
Mm,
we
mm.
kids and didn't have a lot of communication with our parents other than eating dinner and on the weekends sometimes that we didn't have anything else we were doing. So it is, I love everything that you're sharing and we absolutely have to get you back on to share more because it was beautiful. Thank you so much. You have a website. Do you teach this stuff online too? Do you have a
Yeah, so
certain
I teach this online. I have a program, it's called the Wonderful Parent Academy, as well, and I also do some individual coaching, very limited individual coaching because my time's pretty full. But if people jump on the Bitly that I sent you with the Stop the Fighting Now
Mhm.
book, that will add them to my mailing list as well if they're wanting to do that, and then they'll hear about what's coming up and when I open the doors to my academy again. Um, so
Amazing?
yeah, yeah, it's really cool. Yeah. And can I just reflect on one more thing, Jack, before we finish up, is that
Yeah,
when
for
you were
sure.
telling that story, I want you to give yourself credit for what you actually did, because for a lot of parents, and for me, before I sort of did a lot of this work, I I had the list of 4 million things that I needed to do in my head as I'm driving home. And I would just have ignored it and let this child scream a little bit, but really after I've done this work and I love that you as a mum who's younger than me now, right? Like, they're just sort of that next step back, like that's going to be the way the next lot of kids are parented. And that when a child says, hey, I need to dance in the rain, Mama's going to go, okay, let's just spend 5 minutes doing that and I'll wrap you up in a towel or I'll just wrap you up in something and we'll wash it later. Just pop you back into the car
Mhm.
seat and we'll be fine. Because that's what's so powerful. And that's why he's talking about his emotions and why he's talking about what he needs and the strategies that he can see. Because if he's shut down all the time, he won't talk about it, you know? So you're actually building that emotional intelligence and that emotional vocabulary by doing that. So congratulations to yourself. Like, pat yourself on the back for that intentional action that you made as well, because I don't think that's always easy when we're juggling 87,000 things. Yeah.
Right? Thank you
Yeah.
so much. That means a
Yeah.
lot because I didn't
Yeah.
know if it was me doing the right thing or giving in to him. So I'm happy you said that because we're
Hey,
going to
thanks.
dance in the rain. And I was like, no, it's stopping. It's kind of only sprinkling now. If we get home and it's not raining anymore, this is going to be a whole other thing. So I was like, just stop the car after we went through this much drive through. And I was like, okay, let's go dance.
I
And
love
I'm
it.
out,
I absolutely love it.
unbuckle everything. So
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. It
I
makes
was
me think of
finished.
Peppa
I
Pig.
was
You know
like,
Peppa Pig? You have Peppa Pig in America?
mhm,
Peppa Pig,
yep,
the show? Yeah. So it's like Peppa Pig, stomping in those muddy puddles and falling over at the edge. Like it's what we all do as a family. So we can be in the world and regulate our emotions the way that works for us. So yeah, love
yep.
it.
So beautiful about the outdoors that it's emotion for sure.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. I believe
Yeah.
I feel it myself. So why should they probably feel it way more than you do, actually. So
Yeah. Yeah.
well, thank you so much for this. So I'll share every link that you gave me in the show notes. So everybody look in the show notes for all the special links for Susie. And I'd love to have you back again. And thank you so much for this time.
You're very, very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the end of another episode of the Mama Jack Real Raw Parenting Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Remember, parenting is a journey filled with ups and downs, and it's okay to make mistakes along the way. The Mama Jack Podcast is here to provide you with support, guidance, and real-life stories from fellow parents who are navigating the challenges of raising children. If you have any questions, topics you'd like me to cover, or stories you'd like to share, please reach out to me. I love hearing from my listeners and incorporating your experiences into future episodes. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Podpage, all under the Mama Jack, TheMamaJac. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, you're not alone in this journey, and together we can create a supportive community of real, raw parents. Stay tuned for more episodes filled with laughter, tears, and everything in between. Until next time, keep being the amazing parent that you are.